What y'all thought y'all wasn't gonna see me? I'm the Osiris of this. Shh. What's up, y'all? I'm actually getting a little schwitzy. It's been a minute. I haven't done a YouTube live like with like YouTube, but not just Patreon fam in a minute. So let's hope I remember how to do this. What is up, y'all? I see y'all are already going in the chat. Happy Kwanzaa, happy Festivus, whatever it is that y'all celebrate. It's good to be here with y'all on today, the eve of Xmas. Hey, oh, hi, friend. That reminds me, couple bits of housekeeping before I get into this. So we are on right now live, but I will most likely be unlisting or privating this after I take this live, after I end the live, because what YouTube does is they immediately demonetize all of my lives. Like as soon as it's done, it's just like, you've been demonetized. And then I have to appeal it and wait for them to remonetize it. And because I ain't trying to play with y'all. I mean, let's be real. Like I want my little 16 cents I'm gonna get from the ads they put on this. So if and when they remonetize it, it will be back up. So if you're catching this on the replay and you're wondering why it was in your feed and vanished, or why it wasn't in your feed and all of a sudden there's a replay of a live you never knew about, that's why I will most likely have to temporarily, if not permanently, take it down. It really depends on whether YouTube messes with my coins today and for how long. We shall see. Sometimes they take a very long time to remonetize, sometimes not long at all. So hopefully it won't be long so I can just make this public again after we actually end the live. And then two, my friend Emily, who is here in the chat, I just highlighted her. All right, I already lost the comment. But anyway, I'm going live with Emily and Audra at home, Emily Han and Audra at home. They've both been on my channel a few times now. I've been on their channels. We're all friends, and we're gonna be talking about our 5 favorite things that we got out of our Black Friday participation in consumerism. The link is already in the D box underneath this, so don't worry about that. It's already there for y'all because I'm a type A personality and I'm a prepared person, although I didn't have the nitty gritty of the makeup today because I don't really love how it turned out. There's a couple things that I'm not liking right now with today's makeup, but the key elements are there. The things that people are gonna ask me about, like what lip this is and what lashes these are, those are there. So yeah. I will be on here for no longer. I'm probably going to be on here like half an hour, 45 to an hour if we're really cutting it up and the convo is juicy. But I do have a hard out of 5 p.m. because I got to get over to Audra's channel so that we can do our live together. It has indeed, my dear Shanette. It's good to see you up in here. So, oh, look who else is here. So yeah, we're going to be over on Audra's channel a little bit after 5 p.m. my time, 5 p.m. Pacifically. Because I am on the West Coast. So adjust that as you will. I mean, I don't know what y'all's time zones are and stuff. But yeah, if you want to kiki with us some more after I'm done with this bit of, it's kind of a year-end lukewarm tea wrap-up because some of this tea, it's iced tea. It's not even lukewarm. It's just, it's cold. It's cold. And the first thing I want to talk about is definitely cold tea. Dave Chappelle. People still talking about him. People are still talking about Dave Chappelle. Obviously, I think it was October when his most recent special came out on Netflix, and then a few more weeks recently, more recently than that. After the special, there was a whole situation where his high school, I think, was going to name an auditorium after him or some such, and then they reneged on it because of the controversy that he was experiencing and the deluge of bad press. And then he basically put out a weird statement on Instagram, which he barely even uses anyway. I don't understand, but yeah, he put out a weird statement that someone didn't proofread clearly because there were some grammatical errors in there, and he was clearly salty about his school apparently reneging on naming the auditorium after him. And there was some sort of thing about some weird like donations to the school flex. I don't really even remember it at this point, but I already did a whole ass video on Dave Chappelle last year. I think it was 2019, after he did Sticks and Stones. You can find it just by searching my channel for Dave Chappelle. My feelings have not changed much since then, and clearly, neither have his. The closer, the newer special, was essentially Chappelle doubling down on the portions of Sticks and Stones that drew the most ire, the parts of that special that got people the most upset. Now, I haven't rewatched the nappy-headed jojoba video that I did on Dave Chappelle because I don't care to rewatch my own content. Once it's edited, I don't really want to look at it again. But I remember how I felt, and I remember also watching that special before having known particularly what the controversy was. So I went in there knowing that he was in hot water, but I'm like, have y'all ever seen Dave Chappelle before? Like he's a shitster. This is, why are y'all surprised that he said something scandalous, something untoward, something blue, something not politically correct? That's his entire brand. But then I watched Sticks and Stones, the old special, and the thing that I thought people were upset about was not even the thing that people were most upset about. So I completely missed the mark there. However, the blowback that he received for his comments about trans folks and the LGBT community in that special writ large, he decided to revisit that in the closer. And as I said in that other video where I was talking about Sticks and Stones, since I am not part of the offended group, it isn't my place to say whether or not his comments are offensive to trans people, to LGBT people. Like, I'm not in that group. I don't get to decide. It's the same as when white people try to tell me that I need to accept Jeff Sar's apology. Apples to apples. Y'all don't get to tell me to accept Jeff Sar's whack ass apology for chasing women down the street, calling them bitches. Okay? So I also reiterate that Dave Chappelle is, in fact, one of my all-time favorite comedians, and he's a huge influence on me, okay? I am biased. He literally changed my life, you know? I've had the pleasure of meeting him because, as a lot of you guys do know, that I work in show business, and like, he wouldn't know me to pick me out of a lineup, but like, I met him, I admire him, he's changed my life. I have a bias, I'm making that clear. Also, as someone who is a comedy writer and I've done stand-up, I do draw a pretty hard line on there being nothing sacred when it comes to comedy. So ultimately, for me, and I think for most people in comedy, it's like, does the joke work or not? Is the joke funny? Is the joke successful? Comedy is not concerned with being sensitive to people's feelings or their identities, and more often than not, comedians are also provocateurs. You know, you're going to piss some people off. So again, conceding that I am not in the offended group, I don't get to decide if Chappelle should be forgiven by trans folks for his remarks. Like, that's not up to me. They don't have to forgive him. They don't. And they also don't have to watch his comedy specials. It gets strange to me when people are out here demanding artists do their art in a different way. Because what is not an apples to apples comparison is making jokes that may or may not be successful that offend people versus chasing some women down the street, calling them bitches. That has nothing to do with art. I keep revisiting that because we're on YouTube, and I feel like that's sort of like a tentpole example of something that most people will be familiar with in, you know, a similar but not the same context. So I found the closer to be boring, if I'm perfectly honest with you. A moment ago, I was talking about, is the joke successful? It was not for me. Like, I don't really remember laughing for real much at all. I think maybe I had one like, maybe once the whole time. And again, this is my guy. Dave Chappelle is like one of my all-time faves. So I was kind of aghast at just how boring and unfunny I found it to be. I kept finding myself asking, where are the jokes? It felt more like he was having a tantrum responding to the backlash of the previous special Sticks and Stones. It did not feel like a comedy special. It felt like a rant / tantrum where he got paid several millions of dollars to respond to internet trolls. I don't know. Rather than the closer, I feel like that should have been called Too Rich, Too Long. They should have called that special Too Rich, Too Long, because Dave Chappelle has been too rich for too long. That's how it feels to me. He's a rich guy complaining about being canceled and then trying to prove that he can't be canceled by hitting the same or similar points in these rants that he's calling jokes. I don't know. I found myself wandering off to wash dishes and clean my apartment as I was watching. I eventually just kind of listening to it because I was just like, okay. Now, comedy is subjective, of course. To not or to dislike or to love Dave Chappelle in the first place is extremely subjective. But as I said, he's like one of my main people when it comes to comedy influences and inspirations. And for me, this was nowhere near what he's capable of, even outside of the obvious controversy that he is still very much embroiled in my opinion. His style and presentation over the years have evolved so much since his older material, like Killing Him Softly, stuff like that, which is normal. And it is a good thing. I mean, artists should evolve. But for me, the closer was just a miss. And clearly it was a miss for trans folks. Clearly. Again, comedy is subjective. I appreciate a joke that almost hurts to laugh at it. You know what I mean? Where you're almost shocked and maybe a bit ashamed at yourself, where you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm laughing at this. To me, those are the best jokes because it's illuminating the inside of the comedian to dig into that darkness that we all have. And it's also that self-discovery in that moment that you have that darkness in yourself. I love that. So some of the greatest jokes to me are mean, which is not the same thing as being mean-spirited. There is a difference. Dave Chappelle is one of the greatest at crafting jokes like this. He's one of the greatest of all times. Of all time. I hate it when people say of all times. Sorry, of all time. It just seems to me that right now he's so upset. He's so perturbed by people on Twitter. Like, really, Dave? Really? You're too rich. You should you should not be this worried about it. Like Bill Burr, another super rich, super famous comedian. He's another guy who apparently gets canceled routinely. I don't dislike Bill Burr. I'm just not as familiar with his body of work. He's not necessarily one of my guys. But I do know that I've watched enough Bill Burr like interviews and things like that where he's pretty open about like not giving a shit. Like, you know what he says about people canceling him? Basically nothing. He doesn't care because feeding into that makes it worse. And people usually move on in 2 days anyway, maximum. The internet, forget it, 2 days max. It's stand up. People are going to be upset always, When it comes to the accusations of violence, that was strange to me because words mean things. Like, words are not violence. Words can be offensive, words can be upsetting, words can be dehumanizing, but words are not violence. Violence is physical. It's like that internet phrase that people, oh, you woke up and chose violence today. It's more of like a joke thing that people say, but people are really just talking about like you woke up and chose to be mean, or you woke up and you chose to be ignorant, or you woke up and chose to be racist, whatever the case may be. When you equate words with violence, it becomes a very slippery slope because perhaps words incite violence. Absolutely. People get into fights at bars and things all the time. But it's difficult because then you also have to think about when people want to say that rap albums cause people to go out and do things that they wouldn't have otherwise done, or watching movies or playing video games encourage people to go out and do things that they otherwise wouldn't have done. Because how much are we putting on these pieces of entertainment versus personal responsibility? Personal responsibility is also a thing. So The issue, and these are massive issues because this is 2020, 2021 has been one of the most violent years in terms of violent or in terms of attacks and murders of trans people. This is one of these things that gets underreported, like missing and murdered Black women and girls, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit folks. These things get underreported, so people don't realize just how severe the violence against these communities are. But I bristle when people try to draw a direct line between a comedy special and that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that that's as clear a line as people are making it out to be, because it's almost impossible to quantify. And again, it's going back to that idea of video games causing violence and things like that. I mean, maybe, but I feel like that's been proved to be categorically false repeatedly when people have actually studied that sort of thing. So I don't know. Absolutely. I just did a whole video on what accountability actually is, Chrissy. And I think a lot of people confuse accountability with consequences, which is something I talked about in DaBaby's video, or even with apology. Accountability, taking accountability is not the same thing as being sorry. Accountability is saying, I did this, or I did not do this thing that I said I was going to do. That's taking accountability. It's not assigning emotion to it. I mean, sometimes apologies can be warranted. It should be a nice little sandwich with taking accountability, depending on what was done or what was not done. But they are not the same thing. And again, words mean things. And I feel like we are in such a bizarre time where so many words are becoming utterly meaningless because of their misuse. So, yeah. It's weird. It's weird with Chappelle. And then he's got this documentary coming out, which I have actually seen, because he did, I don't know what you would call it, I guess a screening at the Hollywood Bowl back in October. And a friend of mine had extra tickets and she was like, oh, do you want them? And I was just like, oh, this will be perfect. I'll take, it'll be a nice little date night with Mr. X. So I scored these tickets thinking it was going to be like a comedy show. It's like Dave Chappelle and Friends for Untitled Dave Chappelle documentary. It did have a working title at the front of it that I can't even remember now. But it was a complete bait and switch in terms of what I thought this was. I didn't realize it was mainly going to be them showing us a semi-fine cut of this documentary, which was all about him doing the shows on his farm in Ohio, the live comedy shows outdoors, where he was like having everyone tested, and he created a bubble with the other comedians doing stand-up. And there was like no explanation, like that's really what this, at least I didn't know. I thought that it was going to be like a comedy show, and maybe they would film parts of the comedy show at the bowl for insertion into the documentary. No, they were just showing us the documentary. And then, and I remember like about 45 minutes in, like I'm looking at Mr. X and he's looking at me like, are they going to do a comedy show? Or are we just watching this? Wow. So that was disappointing, not only because ultimately after the documentary, it was Dave Chappelle drunk and chain smoking, hanging out on stage with his rich friends, just like basically doing karaoke, like not even literally, but we ended up leaving when it was Chappelle just badly singing along to Roxanne by the Police. I was just like, you know what, let's hit it. And this is after, he brought out Stevie Wonder to just like say a couple words, which was kind of cool, but I was just like, okay, so Stevie Wonder's just chilling backstage, like this is a weird flex. And then he's just bringing out all of his like famous friends. He brings out Talib Kweli, he brings out Snoop, he brings out Lizzo. And it was just weird. It was just like, I was like, dude, you should have done this at home. Like, this feels like this should be in your living room because you're just partying with your celebrity friends on stage at the Hollywood Bowl. These tickets were expensive. And the documentary itself was very, very self-congratulatory. It was just like Chappelle on his own fucking shit for 2 hours. Oh, this is so important. I'm so great. Look what I tried to do to keep comedy going despite this horrible situation we're in with the pandemic. And I'm like, yes, of course, comedy and connection and trying to create some semblance of normalcy is important, but you put some comedy shows on in your yard. Like, I don't, it's not that deep, man. I don't know. I just think he is in this weird place, which happens to a lot of celebrities, where he's been surrounded by yes men for so long, he's lost the plot. Like, I don't feel like he understands what is happening in the world around him. There's a moment in the documentary where he's been doing these shows for a little while now. And they have like a montage of him calling up different celebrity friends to bring them out as it's like gaining more steam. And, you know, people are talking about it in the press and whatnot. And he's on the phone with Badu, Erykah Badu. And he's just like, yeah, man, I want you to come out here, girl. I'll send you a plane. And it's just like, y'all didn't have, like, y'all chose to keep this in this moment where like he's just casually gonna like send her a PJ. I mean, cool, but I don't really feel like that detail adds anything except flexing. I don't know. There were just a lot of moments like that where I'm glad that Dave Chappelle has reached the success he has, but I feel like it's also really damaged his ability to do his job. These rich guys get too rich, and then it's just like, y'all really don't know what is happening out there in the world anymore. All right. Exactly. It was just like, everything is so, I am so great. And I remember when he first came out to introduce the documentary before it actually started rolling on the screens at the Bowl. This was the week that the special had also gone up on Netflix. So this was like the peak of the backlash, where like everyone's just like, cancel Dave Chappelle. He's transphobic. He's a TERF. All these things. And he's just like, they trying to cancel me? I'm the Osiris of this shit. I'm King Kong, motherfucker. Like, he essentially came out and did that, like gloating about having sold out the Bowl. I was just like, I mean, no tea, no shade, Chappelle, but we also bought these tickets before the controversy. Most people didn't know. Not that they wouldn't have purchased them, but it was just kind of a weird lack of perception of reality there. And again, this tantruming over people being offended by things that he said. Like, they have a right to be offended. Your job is to be funny, and I don't even think you achieved that. So like, bruh, pick a struggle. Yeah. He's still one of the all-time greats because of his overall body of work, but this was a miss for me in every way. Like, the risk of offending so many people did not pay off, because for what? Anyway, so that's kind of all I have to say on the whole Chappelle thing. I was talking to Caswell, you know, the rapper. We're friendly on IG. And he was wanting me to chime in with my thoughts, but I was just like, I don't know. I mean, you really can't say anything. There's going to be people upset with the opinions I just expressed today, even though I would say that my opinion is rather complicated. But there's going to be people who distill everything I just said into me saying that I support Chappelle and therefore I too am by association a TERF. Like, I'm sure that's going to happen, but I go the Bill Burr route. Like, I don't give a fuck. If you call me something that's not true, my life somehow goes on. All right. Speaking of why? Jussie Smollett. Wow. I have complicated feelings about that too. But my main because there's been a weird backlash to the backlash, I guess. Like, once people realize, like, oh Lord, what, something in the milk ain't clean with this, there's been this kind of like Hotep brigade, if you will. Not Hoteps, because they would never defend a gay man, but I guess the LGBTQ community equivalent. Wow, that was a tongue twister. Defending something that I find, I'm like, what? But wait, but why did he even do this? What was the goal? I think it's possible to want to support someone who made a bad choice, but what was the reason, Jussie? What was the reason? And I also hate the rhetoric that, and this is coming from the other side, where people are really angry with him because they're saying that now people can use him as an example to abuse and disbelieve future real victims. Nope. Stop saying that, please. That's not true at all. Stop saying that. This is by no means an excuse or a reason to not believe people who are victims of various hate crimes or whatever else in the future. That's insane. I remain mystified and probably always will be baffled by what this whole heist, if you will, was going to be. But do not continue to spread any kind of rhetoric or idea that this somehow discredits future victims who are real. That's ridiculous. I hate that. I hate that. Yeah, and the people who are just blindly defending him, I don't understand y'all either. The whole thing, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you, The Shadow Blog. YouTube space. No, I have not. Biracial and mixed race. Okay. Absolutely not. Have not heard of it. Not familiar. Wow. I mean, there's plenty of Black on both sides people who embrace these things, but they don't necessarily do what they chess. They don't necessarily even realize they're doing it. But wow. Yikes. I don't even know what to say to that because I'm not familiar, but I hate it. I'll tell you that based on your description. I hate it. Kim Potter. Kim Potter. Also found guilty. As of yesterday, we found this out. My reaction is basically the same as it was when Derek Chauvin was convicted. I mean, there will never be justice because Daunte Wright ain't coming back. George Floyd ain't coming back. The list goes on and on. So even when there is a guilty verdict against one of these killer cops or, killer civilians, it's hollow. It's a hollow victory, especially as someone who wants to see police abolished, full stop, prisons abolished, full stop. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in consequences and accountability. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in community safety. But the prison system is slavery, and police are just overseers. That's it. Oh my goodness, another super chat. Thank you so much, Minguita. Minguita, that's a beautiful name, Minguita Palacios. I hope I'm saying it correctly, but thank you for the super chat. Happy holidays, y'all, by the way. Very sweet. So again, when the system that I want to see burnt to the ground, when there's a glitch in the matrix and the people who it usually protects are held up as examples, because they're basically just trying to make sure people don't lose their minds and start rioting Christmas weekend. Oh my goodness, you guys. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Diane. Love you guys too. It actually is, like, now that I'm a little bit more relaxed and just chatting with you guys, I feel a little bit better than I did when I first started this. But yes, when when they do things like this, it's to placate the public, because I think they realize things are on a razor's edge for a lot of us right now. But here's how it feels. The knife is already in my back. Finding her guilty just means you didn't twist it. That's all that is. It's not justice to me to see someone punished by a system I don't believe in, because that's the same system that allowed her to murder that young man in the first place. That's the same system that led her to think she would get away with it. That's the same system that allowed Derek Chauvin to do it a number of times to a number of other people, and that's why Floyd wasn't his first. There was a history there. And we just know these two people's names because they've been in the news recently. There's plenty of others whose names we don't know who are doing horrible things to marginalize people as I speak right now. LAPD shot and killed a 14-year-old girl yesterday. She was in a fitting room at a Burlington. They chased the suspect into the store and she was shot through the wall. LAPD is talking about a crime spree. It's them. They're the crime spree. They've had their most murderous year, I want to say, in 3 years this year, in terms of how many bodies they've got on them between LAPD and LASD, LA Sheriff's Department. So, yeah, my feelings with Kim Potter, it's the same as Chode. And in the end, we keep us safe. These systems are never going to keep us safe. So do not think that her being found guilty somehow means that the system is working. That's a glitch. My ideal is not for the Kim Potters of the world to go to jail. My ideal is for the Kim Potters of the world to never have the power to kill the Dante Wrights of the world in the first place. My ideal is to have a society where there isn't another case with another killer cop, but where there are no cops at all, and we enforce community safety in other ways. I say all the time, like, the first step is mitigating the conditions that enforce poverty in the first place and that allow power to continue to consolidate. And then when we do wind up having these psychopaths in our community, because there are psychopaths, that is a thing that's going to be an issue. There are going to be people who just got the bloodlust, right? People who are not good. When we do have a Chauvin or a Potter in the community, they will be dealt with. There's other ways to enforce community safety. I'm going to leave that there because I'm on YouTube. Imagine claiming you thought it was your taser because you think some kind of whack ass, obviously a lie bullshit like that, you think you can get away with that. Typically she would. That's the gag. She would have gotten away with it, perhaps in a different climate, perhaps in a different year. But sometimes every now and then they got to make an example of people to quell the masses. That's all that is. It's not justice, because Dante ain't coming back. Ain't no justice, as long as that boy is still on the ground. Ugh. All right, so Astroworld. I think that was one. I just kind of have a list of things in my phone that I never got a chance to talk about because I've been so bad with my videos this year. It's been a bad year for me in terms of consistency here on YouTube, but I do miss y'all. It's just, I haven't had a good year emotionally. So the added task of doing YouTube on top of like my job, like my career and Patreon, because like that's like the fam, and I got to make sure that I'm tending to that garden the most consistently. Like YouTube is typically just like another layer, and it's just like if something's going to suffer, it's going to be the YouTube. So I do miss y'all. But yeah, I've had this running list over the past, like probably since October, since Chappelle was on there, and I've just been adding to it. But Astroworld and Travis Scott. Where are the Baby's fans to defend Travis Scott, y'all? Why aren't they defending him? Because it seems to me, now listen, the initial like day, maybe 2 days later, apology video that Travis Scott put up was Razzie level acting. Like that was some of the worst acting I think I've seen in my life. Maybe if he had just closed his eyes and rubbed them a little bit more, it would have been more convincing. If he had just done that 8 or 9 or 10 more times, maybe it would have been a more convincing performance. But the complete lack of sincerity did not help. I haven't even watched the interview he did with Charlemagne because I was busy doing literally anything else. But here's the thing. Travis Scott, you got yourself mixed up with those Kardashians, and then the second there was an issue, they dropped you like a hot potato. They cut him out of whatever show. I've never seen any of their shows, and that will remain the case so long as there's breath in my body. But the Kardashians like dropped him like a hot potato, and then the lawsuits abounded. And it's interesting to me that because racism is still a factor here, it's shifting this from being a systemic failure to being a personal failure of Travis Scott's. Like, do you know how many people had to fuck up and make the wrong call in succession and oftentimes concurrently throughout these sequences of events where all these people wound up losing their lives? That's not just on him. It's not just, and apparently he is known to incite things, with audience members doing things that are really dangerous and irresponsible, what have you. That is on him. But I don't know. There's also that semi-viral video where there were a bunch of kids pleading with one of the cameramen to stop the show, to get some help because people were getting trampled. And the cameraman, I mean, I really felt for him, honestly. Like, people wanted to have him like in the stocks. Like, people wanted his head on a pike because he didn't know what to do. But we are in the dystopia, you guys. It's not a futuristic dystopia. We're in it right now. And people are so desperate to keep their jobs that abuse them and don't pay them well. He probably didn't know whether to take these kids seriously. Like, what if this was some prank and then he listened to them and then he got fired for listening to kids who are pranking him for a TikTok, or, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the dilemma he was in. Like, I could see that panic and like, I'm just trying to do my job in his eyes. And there are so many treacherous things that are perpetrated in the guise of people just doing their jobs. But when you're on that level of our economy, it's like, no, that guy really is just trying to do his job. Like, I don't think that he knew what to do other than to keep doing his job. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about systemic failures. Like, this isn't just Travis Scott messing things up and being responsible for people losing their lives. Like, this is several things that went wrong. So I just thought that was really interesting, that it's somehow all being placed on him. And again, even though he does bear a good deal of responsibility and he's handled this almost, if it were funny at all, which it isn't, he's handled this laughably bad. Like, wow, get you some media training, Jesus. But yeah, it's just exactly, Serenity. It's not just these two. It's so many failures. It's a domino effect, and it's heartbreaking because I think the youngest victim on record was like 9, and now Scott is being named in lawsuits in the billions of dollars. So again, to make an example, they want to ruin him because that will be what is considered justice in this case. If he is financially ruined, like, what about all the other people who fucked up? Wow. So yeah. Did I have any other points that I wanted to make about that? Yeah, I mean, $2 billion lawsuit filed in Texas. That's just one. There's a few different ones. So, but that's, I mean, fuck around with them Kardashians, you get what you get. Not that they're directly responsible either. I don't mean to imply that by any means. I just mean, just look at all these black men who get tangled up with them and how they wind up on the other side. Kanye, loonier than ever. Loonier than ever. Oh, God. And now supposedly Kim Kardashian is may or may not be dating Pete Davidson from SNL, who looks like he smells. Like, every time I look at a picture or a clip of Pete Davidson, I feel like I just failed a pap smear. He's gross, is what I'm saying. But as much as that kind of gave me vertigo to hear that they may or may not be dating, because I've made it clear, like, I do my best to not keep up with the Kardashians, but no matter what I do, I still somehow wind up hearing about them because they own the media. They own the social media. So you still wind up hearing about them. It kind of makes sense because in a weird way, like, Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson are kind of the same thing in terms of their function in pop culture. Obviously, she is more famous than he is. But cute story. I face swapped Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson and nothing happened. I'm kidding. I don't even know how to do that. But they're the same person. They're the same. I'm telling you, he looks like he stinks. Like, just bad hygiene vibes, you know? Just yuck. Thank you, Hollywood 2000. Y'all are so sweet. He looks like he bites. Melanie. I'm going to have you explain that later when we Zoom. If you're interested, I am going after I go live with Audra and Emily in just a few minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up. After I go live with them, we're doing a Zoom Christmas Eve Kiki on my Patreon. So if you're interested, the notification squad tier and above will have access to that Zoom. It's already up. And Melanie is part of the Patreon fam. So I'm going to need you to explain that comment. But yeah, that's it. I mean, I have a few other things on my list here, but I do want to make sure that I have time to just kind of touch up my makeup if I need to, if I'm getting a little shiny around the crease of my nose, as I tend to before I get on with Audrey and Emma. Audrey and Emma. Emily and Audra. Ooh, another super chat. Y'all are so cute. I do not listen to Travis Scott, but you know what I have listened to 3 times in the past like 15 hours or so is Nas's new EP Magic. So pretty much the opposite of Travis Scott. I am a hip hop head, but Travis Scott has nothing to do with hip hop as far as I'm concerned. Nas's new EP Magic is hard. I love it. It's so good. There's maybe like 1 or 2 what will probably end up being skip tracks for me, but for the most part, it's like the beats are so good. Nas and Hit Boy, because he's been working with Hit Boy a lot lately. He was with Hit Boy on King's Disease 2. I think he was with Hit Boy on King's Disease 1 as well. So like they've been working together for a minute now. But it's funny, on the new EP Magic, he's saying that like he and Hit Boy are the new Gangstar. And I was just like, first of all, Nasir, you were around with the old Gangstar, but I appreciate that comparison. And it was really funny too, because there's one of the tracks has Primo, DJ Premier, who obviously is one half of Gangstar, RIP to Guru, DJ Premier, who is probably my favorite producer of all time. I think Primo has produced what would be my favorite beats ever. So it was just like a very heartwarming coalescence of so many things of hip hop that I love, where it's like Premier. I feel like I've gotten more into Nas later in life than I did when I was younger. I don't think I was like a big Nas guy growing up. I was more into like Biggie and whatnot, but like as Nas, going back to evolving as artist, as Nas has evolved, I've gotten a lot more into him in recent years. And Nobody off of King's Disease 2, which is Nas featuring Lauren, Ms. Lauren. I have listened to that song more than any other song this year. Like I know the whole song front to back at this point. I know all the lyrics. It took me a minute to nail the end of Nas's first verse where he switches up his flow and it's kind of like like it gets a little faster. Like that took me a minute. But I love that song. I've listened to it so many times. You should. It's a shorty do. It's like 35 minutes because it's just an EP, but I've listened to it thrice and it just dropped at midnight Eastern last night. It is it's not even 24 hours. I've already listened to the whole thing 3 times. So I'm feeling it. All right, family. I am going to see a lot of y'all very soon over on Audra's channel. Again, the link is in the D box. We will see if YouTube demonetizes this. If by some miracle, by some Christmas miracle, they haven't demonetized me, it will stay up. If not, I will be privating or unlisting it until my monetization is on because I need my coins. I don't mind telling you. People will be like, oh, she only does this for the money. Yeah, sure. Okay. Cool. So I will see y'all over on Audra's channel for 5 for 5 best shopping of Black Friday. I got to get my items out here and organized, so I'll be ready. And then my patrons, I'll be seeing y'all a little bit later for our Christmas Eve Kiki where we can unwind and I can take these jeans off and put on my house clothes to get a little bit more comfortable. So I'm excited for all that. Love y'all. Stay safe. Stay dangerous. Never trust anyone with a Morphe code, and have a gorgeous holiday in 2022. Bye-bye.